So, what have we covered on this show? We've covered how we all met. We've covered how we came into all of our creative paths. And we've talked a little about the journey, which is getting out there to Hollywood or getting into movies or getting into creativity. But we haven't gone into real depth about how we got into our jobs and our experience in those jobs and, you know, what drove me to where I'm at now.
I've really got to be careful because depending on what I say, there is a court order. I'm not allowed to talk about certain things. No, it feels a little bit like that when you start off as an independent. It's like you do anything and everything, and then when you start you take that level up. And I'm sure Wyatt, you feel probably the same way. It's when they hand you an NDA, and it's like I don't know when this starts and when well, I know when it starts. I don't know when it finishes.
Well, it's weird because you probably had more encounters with NDAs than I did. Because despite some of the fairly large projects, it's weird. I have like a good career, a solid career, but I never crossed over into that stratospheric, VA number
Oh, you
one
didn't?
top list, number one box office films. I never did that stuff. But what's weird is I think a lot of the stuff that for me would have been NDA material happened before the internet and happened before digital.
Oh, cool. Very
So,
cool.
for example, working on Star Trek Next Generation, working on the pilot of Star Trek Voyager, working on Predator 2.
Whoa, whoa, hold on a second. Wait. I gotta stop. I see. I just learned something. You worked on
Okay.
the pilot for Star Trek Voyager, which is Caretaker, right?
Yes, I helped build the caretaker. I helped build the caretaker array.
Because you also have a history of being a actor on
Yes.
Star Trek: The Next Generation.
I've been on the Next Generation sets. I've been on the Deep Space Nine sets, although I didn't work on Deep Space Nine. I've been on the Enterprise sets. I don't think I was ever on the Voyager sets. So I was on all of them except for Voyager sets. The Enterprise sets I was on. But yeah, worked on Next Gen and Voyager. So
Are you giddy, Gil?
No, it's not that I'm giddy. It's just like every time we have this conversation, it's like, are you serious? We didn't like spiritually. We're obviously from the same parents because it's like, and my big brother was right where I wanted to be and where I ended up being because I ended up on the Next Generation. Sorry, not the Next Generation sets. I missed out and I was really disappointed because my first kind of exposure was on the Voyager sets, and I remember walking around going, I know these sets because I became friendly with Andrew Probert, who was the original designer for Next Generation and in the original motion picture Enterprise. And we'd spent many times. I went and visited him many times. And when he heard that I was going onto the sets, he said, "Well, if you go into this room and you look up, you'll see this part that's still in the hangar bay. There was a little kind of console room with it was just basically plywood with a window cut out." And he goes, "That's from the Enterprise set." And he gave me a big heads up. But I was a huge fan of Deep Space Nine, so the minute I got access to the set, they were just starting to wind down, and I think there was like a handful of episodes. I'm trying to get my timeline right. I'm not sure if Voyager had started or not, but I remember going on there in there, and I was just like a kid in the candy store. If you thought I was giddy when Wyatt was talking about it, and again, I'm shameless, right? I was shameless because I was like, hey, I'm from Australia. What are they going to do? Send me home? I haven't lost anything. I'll be back doing stuff. So look, I remember I had one of the world's first digital cameras that could take high def images. And I remember going around and taking photos of really small things because that's what I enjoy doing. It's like the little minutia stuff. And people kind of went, "What's that guy doing?" And then it was like, "Oh no, that's Gil. He's from Australia. He's kind of like an intern. Kind of, he's documenting stuff for us, which is pretty awesome." And then slowly, like the actors started noticing, and I remember like certain actors would just like they'd be waiting around between takes and have conversations about, oh, I went to we have a theater festival here in Australia, in South Australia, and they would talk to me about how they came out to do stage plays here. And it was a complete like I'm like, really? You're all dressed up in the Odo makeup and you talk to me about like the wineries where I used to live. And of course, the amazing thing about that was years later, there was a con here, and Rene Bourgeois was here. It was and he was you couldn't talk to him unless you bought a ticket, and the ticket was $100 and all the rest of it. And I got onto his Facebook, his Twitter, and I sent him a message, not thinking he would ever remember. And he's like, "I'm having lunch, meet me, whatever." And he took one look, and he's like, "Hey, Gil, you still in Hollywood, or you here?" And we ended up going to dinner and all the rest of it, and I was just devastated. Cool. Like I think it was December 2019 that he passed away, because we left, the same way, very similar to the story I told last podcast, was we'll catch up soon.
We'll talk.
And
we'll talk.
We'll talk. It's like, we're going to cross paths again. It's all cool. Next time you're in LA, let me know, kind of thing. And he was, I used to always joke to him, with him about his role on Benson. And he'd always say, "You're too young for that." And I'd be all like, Preston Endicott III was his character. And I go, "Preston," and he'd look at me, don't say that. I was like, "Do you want me to call you Odo?" And he's like, "No."
No.
Amazing guy. But again, going back to, the fact that there were these parallels. Like, here I am, I happen to get an opportunity to work at Paramount. I end up, working on the same project that Wyatt's working on some level. And again, it just freaks me out. So I didn't mean to take your thunder away, but I was just like,
quit following me,
Gil.
Quit following me.
There's another thread.
I'll go back to talking about Star Trek in a minute, but you bring up an interesting point that I don't get starstruck very often. I've only been starstruck a couple of times in my life. I remember I was going to the 20th Century Fox lot to pick up a piece of equipment for a music video. Like, 20th Century Fox had rented this Luma crane. We needed the Luma crane for a Sunday music video shoot. They weren't using the Luma crane that day, so I could go to the stage, pick up the equipment. But they were shooting that day on a Sunday, and they were working on War of the Roses, which Danny DeVito was directing, and it was
very cool.
Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas. I was fine. I'm picking up equipment. I'm talking to the first AD, and I hear this husky female voice, and I turn around, and there's Kathleen Turner right there with like a cigarette, and she's like, "Hi." And I was just like, so I'm not starstruck very often, but I think the professionalism comes in not losing it and kind of staying focused and just being cool. And on Star Trek Next Generation, I come out of makeup my first day of shooting, I walk on set, and there's Jonathan Frakes, Commander Riker, and he's like, "Hi." And we just start talking. And then you hear voices. So like, I hear this voice. It's like, "Good morning, Jonathan," and I know it's Patrick Stewart.
You said you could feel it.
You can feel Patrick Stewart's voice in your chest when he talks. So and you turn around and you're like, "Oh, hey, Patrick, hey, how's
Wyatt,
it going?"
your performance ends here. No,
so and then they all just start showing up, and they're talking about breakfast, coffee, the news, the drive to work, their children, their puppy dogs, conventions. So the trick, I think, was just, don't freak out, don't ask them the stupid questions, and just talk to them. And that was a really interesting experience, to just chat and not be a fanboy and not be a geek, just chat with them. Yeah.
Because you're working, you're an actor at that point, and
I don't have anything to prove. I don't have to show them anything. It's like, I got cast. Sure. I'm sitting here in chairs with you. I've got makeup on. I'm waiting to go on camera with you. But yeah, so it's a surreal experience. It's a surreal experience.
That was a skill that I had to learn early on too, even in radio, because one of the things that I did a lot of was interview bands. And so yeah, I had to not totally geek out.
She had to not take her panties off and throw them at the band members,
Well, I waited till after the interview for that.
Next time you and Wyatt have a fight, please recall those stories ad nauseum. You know how you brought this up on the webcast?
Like, la 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 la. Yeah. I am not listening to Gayle. La 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 la. No, I'm kidding.
I'm now going to go call my friend Slash and read his.
Well, one of the things that a trick that I did while interviewing everybody was just pretend I've just met them at a party. That as opposed to being in that.
And she took off her underwear and threw them at. No, I tease. Go ahead, I tease.
I missed that happening at AFM. I don't know. I must have been in the wrong place at the wrong time. I was trying to get a deal.
No, please. No. You met them at a party.
No, that was it.
Because I know you. You don't throw your underwear at people at a party. I know
often.
you.
Everyone who's listening right now, let me tell you the truth. It's not Wyatt. Sorry, it's not Gayle. It's Wyatt who takes his underwear off and throws them at people.
Hi, it's Gayle. And if pickleball is your kind of fun, let me introduce you to Backhanded Compliments. It's a brand I started with my niece Evie, and it began as a project she was doing in college for a design class. But when I saw the art, I knew we had to do something more with it. So we launched Backhanded Compliments, which is irreverent pickleball apparel for the passive-aggressive pickleball player. We've got graphic tees with phrases on them like, "That was so good for a beginner," or "Make me a sandwich or get out of the kitchen." You can find everything at backhandedpickleball.com. Be sure to use promo code PODCAST for 15% off your first order.
I have always said that I would have happily have slept my way to the top. I just didn't get the opportunity to. I would have happily have slept my way to the top.
I have seen photos with people, again, we know, and we've even commented about, who, you know, I'm thinking about, oh, well, no, I won't say that because she's passed on, but people who sexualize themselves, and then when you get to meet them in a room, they're absolutely normal. So they could be models, or they could be, you know, what they're selling is the fantasy, and then when you actually sit in a room with them and you talk to them, you realize, you know, your mind is like, the minute the door closes, it's going to be on, and then you realize they're like, "Can I just have a coffee?" You know, and you're like, "It's a really hard morning today," and you're like, "Whoa, that's not exactly what I thought."
Well, I've definitely met people in the industry, and I have friends who've talked about this very same thing, where here's the sex symbol of the day, and they show up at work and they have no makeup on, and they're in a coat, and they're at the truck, and they're getting coffee, and they're having a breakfast burrito, and they're just a person, and then they disappear into makeup for an hour and a half.
So is the Sex Kitten the brand?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me say most of the time. I would say some people probably live it too much in the wrong way. But no, it's very much, here's my image and here's what I'm projecting to the world. In my spare time, I'm sitting with my puppy dog and I'm talking to you about books. But, you know, out in the real world, here's my brand.
You're talking about me, aren't you?
Your underwear.
That's the issue you were talking about with Kathleen Turner, is like, you know, here she is saying hello to you, right? Yeah. And you think you've images
I'm thinking body heat. I'm thinking her and I'm thinking her and William Hurt. I'm thinking of her as the voice of Jessica Rabbit.
Romancing the Stone.
She's just a woman standing there smoking a cigarette saying hi. And it's like...
So why is she saying hello to you? That's my question. Like, this is where I got to be honest with you. I sometimes go, okay, what's going... Like, are you just saying hello because you're in the industry and it's always good to meet new people? Or is there like fishing a little bit?
I can tell you exactly why Kathleen Turner said hello to me. I was talking to the first AD, and I was trying to coordinate the pickup of all these various bits and parts. Kathleen Turner needed information from the first AD. So rather than walk up and say, "Hey, peon, shut up," she walked up and said, "Hi," as a very polite way of interrupting our conversation so she could ask him what she needed to know, and then she walked away. That's why she said hello. She did it very well, too. She basically said, "Shut up, I have priority, and now I'm going to leave you to whatever you..." That's what happened.
I'm going to keep it in my head the way I thought about it, which is like, "Hi,
hello there.
You're a nice, you know, you're a strapping young man." I do want to go back, and you both shared how you deal with it when you see someone and you're starstruck. I have my own way, and that is I just admit to them straight up. I'm like, "Hi, look, you know what? I know your work, and I kind of feel like I know you. So if I come off really super casual and super friendly to begin with, that's just, you know, don't take that the wrong way." And as the years have gone by and I started doing some YouTube work and started traveling around the world meeting people, I remember meeting a very successful YouTuber, and I was going to spend some time with them, and I just said, look, we've only got a limited amount of time. I just want to let you know I'm going to be bringing up stuff that I know through your kind of reality and educational videos. I hope it doesn't freak you out. And I remember at the end of it, he goes, "You know what? That was the best thing you could have done, because I knew that you weren't coming from a fanboy perspective, but you were someone who did the research and really wanted to get the most out of what was going on."
Fanboy has two different levels. I mean, there's almost like professional fanboy and then scary fanboy. It has two, but I know what you're saying. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
So it's a really interesting kind of question. It's like, how do you deal with meeting someone who might be famous or who you might have a lot of respect for, or might be even a personal hero of yours, and you come across them, whether it's in a Starbucks, whether it's in, let's say, a convention where you paid, and in that, you can do whatever you want to do. Absolutely, you're paying for their time. Or even professionally, if you get the chance to work with someone and you're sitting in a room and you're looking across the table and you're like, I know your work, and I might have really been inspired by it. Is it appropriate for you to go, hey, I just want to let you know I really enjoy your work, or is it better to just be professional? And as you were saying, there's different levels of fanboy, and it's kind of cool.
I appreciate when someone says they like my work. I have talked to people and told them I like their work, and they've appreciated it.
Is that when you take your underwear and throw it at them?
That's right. I make a flag. It's like a surrender flag.
Here, have my jockey shorts.
Yeah. I don't know if our audience knows that we go to conventions,
right,
and Wyatt signs autographs. So he's kind of on both sides of the fanboy
Not
world.
being like real super famous or anything, but being known well enough in certain fan circles that I've experienced the scary part of it. I've experienced the weirdness of it. And it can be very flattering when someone comes up and you are as close as they're ever going to get to Star Trek: The Next Generation. And they're thrilled to meet you and talk to you because you have experience with Star Trek and they love Star Trek and they want to talk to you.
That one
and
girl cried, didn't
It's
she?
really fun and it's really sweet. And some of the fans, and the ones who are so enthusiastic about Predator 2, they just love Predator 2. They get to talk to you, they see the photo, they get to hear your stories, and it makes it real to them. It brings it home for them. But there's a weird area where, like, people who I'm a huge fan of, Harrison Ford. I've watched so many of his movies. I've studied his facial expressions. I've read interviews with him. I've seen so many interviews with him. I do feel like I know him on some level. And people who know me, they see me in a film, they see me act, and they see aspects of me. They see aspects of the real Wyatt come through in certain parts of the performance. They're seeing pieces of me. The weirdness is, yeah, I feel like I know Harrison Ford. I feel like I could sit down and have a conversation with him. I don't know him, though. There's like a personal element there that he's kept to himself that I don't know. So it's a weird zone where you've spent hours and hours and hours, maybe days, with someone's face on a 40-foot screen. Just hours and hours and hours. And so you're so familiar with them, but the mistake is to assume that you know them better than you actually do.
Very true.
I've been that person, though, too, where, we may have already mentioned this once or twice in the podcast. I've been that person who someone corners you at a table at a convention and they want to tell you their life story, they want to tell you their life goals, their life plans, they want to go through their 500-page screenplay or their 500-page comic book with you, they want to whip out their device and show you their short film that they made right then and there in the middle of a crowded convention floor, and you have to be firm and say, sorry, I draw the line here, but let's flip this back again. I think it's foolish to be a celebrity and not think that this stuff is going to happen to you. I mean, if you're the most famous face in movie, if you're one of the Avengers, if you're a Marvel performer, don't think that you're going to walk into a local grocery store and not get recognized. I mean, yes, I think it would be polite if people treated you normally and left you alone, but if you are the most recognizable face in the United States or Australia right now, don't be foolish enough. Don't get mad. Don't get mad when you walk into a grocery store and people go, "Oh, hey, superstar." It's like, duh, of course this is going to happen to you. Now then, of course, there's the flip side of don't be rude, don't monopolize their time, don't say stupid things to them. I don't want to disturb somebody at dinner. Some famous person is eating dinner with their famous wife. I don't want to walk up and interrupt their dinner. People do that. And then, a superstar who's been interrupted 16 times at dinner, he finally turns to somebody and says, "Please, I'm eating dinner. Just let me have my dinner with my wife."
And
please.
now he's an asshole.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
And now all of a sudden, because of that one encounter, that guy's an asshole.
How dare you?
I was at a Starbucks once in Los Angeles, and I had a couple of... I was cast as an undercover officer on a TV show on the Lifetime channel called The Division. And I was featured in a couple of episodes. And I was very specific because they left me rough-shaven because I was the undercover officer, and I always had this long leather jacket
Did you have
on.
long hair at the time?
Not short hair.
Oh, okay.
But I was very featured, but I wasn't. I don't think they ever called me by name. I never had a line of dialogue. But I walked into a Starbucks once, and this guy behind the counter, who might have been gay. I don't want to leap to conclusions, but he might have been gay. He was being friendly, and he said, "I feel like I know you. I've seen you somewhere." I'm like, "Well, I'm an actor. I've done some stuff." And he's fixing my coffee, and he's talking to me, and goes, "Oh my God, you're the undercover cop on The Division." And you think that's going to be the most flattering thing to happen in your day? It's the scariest thing. And this is me. This is somebody who is not particularly... So imagine like you're Brad Pitt, or you're Robert Downey Jr., or you're Chris Evans, or you're Chris Hemsworth. My God, you're going to be recognized everywhere you go, including the bathroom, the gas checkout.
I am so glad you brought that up. Because I have had, like, I'm not an actor. My shoulder has been in a film because I was like a stand-in because they needed someone quickly kind of thing. I think I had a few, literally, they needed a body in a place. In my own films, I do little cameos just because, I believed I was going to be Hitchcock, and not that I ever got there.
You're Hitchcock to us.
Thank you. What, you saying the balding fat man? Thank you. So was that the weirdest kind of experience that you've had, where you were just kind of picked out in public and didn't expect it? Wyatt?
That was very, very weird. The one I think that takes the cake, I haven't talked about this very often because it's so weird. I did this Batman fan film, The Dark Knight Returns, which has gotten more than 1 million views on YouTube and has a large fan base. And I got a message. Somebody went to my website, found my contact info, because you can fill out a form on the website to send me. It doesn't get you straight to me, but it sends it to the info at. And I got an email that was basically like a fetish email where somebody wanted me to dress up like an anime character and suck my thumb and take pictures.
How much? How much?
That when it crosses over into the level of you have become someone's anime sex.
You've made it. You are now famous. You've made it. The good on you, Wyatt. I mean,
yeah. I think there are other famous actors who have dressed up and like done Halloween costumes or have gone to conventions and stuff for fun and dressed up. And I guess there's this anime character, and a couple of famous people have dressed up as this anime character. And there are certain fans who just like, that is the sexiest anime character ever. And so that someone specifically thought highly enough of me to imagine me as that anime character and wanted me to dress up and take sexy photos for them.
It's Totoro, isn't it?
It's scary, and it's ridiculous, and it's horrible. But it's like, well, it's one way of gauging your,
You've got to laugh at it. Now, Gayle, have you had any experiences like that where people have, on the street or whatever, and they've been like, hey, aren't you married to the Batman guy and the Predator? Aren't you? Actually, I know you married a Predator because there's a website that says so.
Because I brag about having married a Predator. No, I don't really. I mean, even at conventions and stuff, there's not ever really been anybody that's come to me looking for anything like that.
Other than the fact that she's just a very gregarious individual, and everybody knows Gayle.
Because I'll talk to anybody.
And everybody knows a Gallagher.
Cool. Yeah.
So, other than that,
Yeah. But no, I mean, there's not been anything weird or scary or creepy or,
Since we're on the subject of talking, you actually brought it up about meeting people. I want to share with you a very quick story, which was that, as I mentioned before, I do some YouTube stuff, and when I came to America, I did some YouTube stuff with someone who's got a great audience, and people started kind of standing there looking at me while I was doing some work, and I was like, hey, and they were like, hi, Gayle, and I'm like, oh, cool, did we meet at this meeting last week? And they were like, no, and it worked out. They were like, we saw you on YouTube with this other person. I was like, okay, great, no problem. Anyway, I went to what they call a makeathon, which is 48 hours where you create and build stuff. And it was just before the opening of it, so I went to the bathroom.
I have bathroom stories.
Right? And I'm at the urinal, and I'm taking care of business, and I realized that out of my peripheral vision on the left-hand side, someone's standing there staring at me, which is probably never good etiquette when someone's at a urinal, is to stare at them. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I don't know, I was just like, this is kind of weird. And so I kind of turned and I was like, can I help you? And he's like, I watch you on YouTube. That's exactly what he said. And I thought to myself going, wow, okay. And I said, well, how about you let me finish up here and meet me outside and we can have a conversation. And I remember walking out the door and just the line out of Coming to America, with Eddie Murphy is just like the guys are like, ah! And it's like, just a man I met in the bathroom. I was just like, that was the weirdest, most inappropriate thing I had ever kind of experienced. And of course, I'm not saying the guy was starstruck, but he didn't really have anything to say. He was just like, you're the guy from YouTube.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. And I was like, cool. And there was a part of me that was just like, life tip, just wait. Don't stare at someone while they're relieving themselves in a bathroom, because if you're not a cool guy, you probably get smacked in the mouth.
Right.
Well, one of the things that we run into is because we do screenings of our films and because we go to all these conventions, you get fans that have gone to one of the screenings or that go from convention to convention. And, we'll carry on the conversations with people while we're standing at the table at the convention, or we've stood in front of a theater of 500 people and done a Q&A. And so, 3 months later, you're at another screening or another convention, and they come up and like we were talking about earlier, they feel like they know you. And I may have talked 100%. To them, but I also talked to 400 other people that same day. And so I've gotten really good at saying, remind me where we met. Tell me your name and remind me where we met. I'm like, I'm not going to pretend. And a lot of time I do recognize them, but sorry, I don't know your name.
And then it's up to them whether or not they're offended or they're not offended, or, I've even outright apologized to people before. I've just point blank said, listen, I meet a lot of people at conventions. I'm sorry. And then sometimes they mention it and I go, oh, and I do exactly know what they're talking about. Yeah. Sometimes they mention it and I have no idea. And I'm just like, cool, excellent, because I don't remember. I don't know.
Yeah, I've had a few moments where, and I must say, because I don't have many people doing this, I do try to be openly friendly because I want to understand where it's coming from. There have been moments where it was a little inappropriate, and I was like, cool, I'll catch you guys later. Because of the involvement in some projects as well, I shared the story with you guys off camera, but I ended up on stage talking about a film out of the 80s with the director and the producer there, only because I was such a fan of the film, and one of the crew happened to realize I could answer a question that was asked by the audience. And then afterwards, it's like all the famous people went in the back, and I just went out to go in and find my partner who was at the show as well. And the next thing you know, you've got 40 or 50 people who are going, can you sign this? And I'm like, I didn't work on the film. And they're like, we don't care. Just sign it. And like, me being cheeky, I'm like, the first couple I signed, properly. And then I'm like, George Lucas, Steven Spielberg. I'm like, I'll see you in the next film, Steven Spielberg. And like, they're like, wow, we got the guy who answered all these questions and knows these people. And I'm like, I don't know them. Like, and in fact, it took like weeks later before I actually was able to get in contact with the director, who was like, yeah, you're the guy who came up and spoke about my film. How do you know about that? And then we had this conversation and we had a little bit of a connection, and then it disappeared. But it's those moments where you realize that just being up on the stage, just having that spotlight, even in a short period of time, people become like it suddenly pushes you into another stratosphere. And I just keep remembering that I think it was in the 90s, there used to be an E! Hollywood story with I think it's AJ Benza, and he used to finish this going, fame, it's a bitch. And I remember thinking to myself going, it's really true. It's like you're around people who are easily recognized in public, and you can see the pressure that it puts on them. But the other flip side of it, which I don't know if you've ever seen this, Wyatt, is is a filmmaker or someone who wants that fame and hasn't reached it. So people who get upset when you walk into they'll make a big deal out of going to a restaurant, and then you walk in and no one knows who they are. And they're like, they get really upset. Right. And I had a good friend of mine who went through that. So when we went to the bathroom, I got a napkin and I wrote, I'm a really big fan. I'd love your autograph. And I went in and I slid it under the toilet door. Like as a joke. The problem was he ran out. Like he must have just grabbed his pants, pulled them up, and ran to see who had done that. And of course, I'm sitting there chuckling. And he looks around and he saw it cut him to the bone. And I was just like, dude, I was just like, you can't take it that seriously. it's like it'll come, and if it comes and you hit where you want to be, there may be a moment where you go, I don't really want this.
There's a big difference, and a lot of young people don't realize this, where you set out going, I want to be famous. I want to be a famous actor. Excuse me. I want to be a famous filmmaker. I want to be a famous fill in the blank. You don't want to be a famous anything. You want to be a successful
I want to be a
something.
rich.
Well, it's like, I want to be a filmmaker. I want my films to be seen. I want my films to be appreciated. The fame can grow from that. Fame in and of itself is a dead end. I mean, we have people in our society, and I'm not even going to start naming people, but there are people in our society who are famous just for being famous.
Sure.
And it's an empty thing. And if you get famous for doing something well, you can reap the benefits of that. It can help. It can hinder. And I've seen it go both ways. If you get a little famous for something, it opens the door to something else. But then there are people who've been so famous, they become recluses and they just kind of hide from society because they're sick of being tormented with this. Hey everyone, I'm Wyatt Weed from the Cinematic Perspective podcast. And as you probably know from listening to the podcast, we make movies. Well, I wanted to take a moment today and talk a little bit about some of those movies and how you can watch them at home. Four Color Eulogy was originally the brainchild of actor and filmmaker Jason Contini, who played the vampire hunter in Shadowland. Jason wrote the original story for Four Color, and then he and Nick Hearn and I wrote the screenplay. Four Color is my second feature film as a director. Four Color Eulogy is about family and dealing with life while trying to pursue your creative dreams. It's dramatic and funny, and if you're a fan of comics and movies and pop culture, you will probably enjoy this film. This is another independent project that was a joint production between Pirate Pictures and Archlight Studios. The film was made in the St. Louis area, and I'm really proud of what we were able to accomplish. You can buy or rent Four Color Eulogy at piratemediagroup.net. You really have to ask yourself why you want to be famous versus why do you want to be successful at your craft. And I've seen the people who are humble, and I've seen the people be swarmed and they handle it very, very well. And I've seen the famous people who, the girls come by and give them the eye, and the girls come by and flirt, and it's just, and the people come by and offer them things and give them freebies, and it's amazing the doors it opens in good and bad ways.
Absolutely.
It's like, again, if your head is not screwed on, if your sense of temptation and what you will and you won't take, if that's not adjusted and if that's not properly, put together in your head before it happens, you can see why people get in trouble. You can see why people shoot up the ladder, self-destruct, and fall down the ladder again.
Absolutely. What you were saying just reminded me of a story. I think one of the first times I came to the US, I ended up in at an airport, and I was sitting opposite a guy called Lorne Peterson.
Sure, yeah. The ILM guy, yeah.
Yeah, one of the original model makers on Star Wars. And as I looked across, I realized that there must have been a convention in town because he was swarmed. There was 3 ILM alumni as such who were surrounded by fans, and I remember sitting there and just listening to what they had to say, and their flight was about to take off, and I happened to have a show reel of the stuff that I was doing here in Australia, and I walked up to him and I said, Mr. Peterson? He said, yeah. Like I said, I wasn't at the convention, but I am a filmmaker. I really like your work. It's very inspiring. Here's a DVD of my work. If you've got a moment, I'd love you to be able to see it. And he said, thank you so much, and walked up and shook my hand and walked off. And again, never thinking anything of it, it happened to be, fast forward, I think it was like 13 or 14 years later, I was with a friend who is an amateur model maker, but makes these what they call studio scale models. And we went over to his house to go pick some stuff up, and they're having a barbecue, and there's Lorne Peterson. And I go, we haven't met. He goes, you're the guy from the airport. I said, yeah. I said, did you take a look at my work? He goes, yeah. He goes, great beginnings. And of course I was like, oh, beginnings. but I was like, the fact that you took a moment,
sure,
and you did actually go and look at it instead of throwing it out.
And that he remembered you that long ago.
I don't know why, but I seem to make impressions on people. I don't know why. It's a good thing and a bad thing. It's great if you want to open a door and network. It's horrible if the police remember you. Because I got arrested, literally, I got arrested on a train station once, and it wasn't me. But the guys were like, we got you. We finally got you. I was like, it wasn't me.
I wasn't even in Detroit at that time. No, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, it's just this amazing, the way you present yourself. I always link it to the enthusiasm and the respect that I try to show. Because when you've got a whole lot of people who are like trying to scheme, we can do this, we can do that, you can sign this, I can sell this, we're going to make lots of money together, and you just walk up and you go, you inspired me, I pursued an area like this, and by the way, here's the work that I've made through your influence. That's something that doesn't happen every day.
True.
And, and that's why I think it's really interesting hearing your stories. I never want to be famous. So do not bombard my email address after you hear this.
I wouldn't mind being a little more famous because I think I'm in a position now in my life that I can handle it. I think I can handle it. I think I'm adjusted enough. I could deal with it. So yeah, a little more fame would be nice. Just a little more.
Padawan, the master, has now taught you how to deal with that. So it's all good. You are now a Jedi Master of fame.
Whether you're at the convention as a celebrity or as a fan, I think that the idea of the respect, like treating the fans with respect.
Sure. Yeah.
You go to some of these conventions, and for the most part, all of the celebs are very gracious and are friendly, but at the same time, you get the couple that are just like, oh my God, I'm so tired of this. And it's just like, no, this is, you're here and you are a celebrity.
I don't really want to
because
be
of
here,
the
but my career's not going that well, and they're going to pay me $2,500 to be here today.
Yeah, but it's because of the fans that
Daddy
you
really
are
needs a new pair of
celebrity.
shoes, so,
Yeah.
I produced a documentary that was about conventions, and I think it was Seika.
Seika's a sharp businesswoman. You don't want to mess with Seika. Anyway.
Sure.
Incredible businesswoman, but one of the things she was talking about was how she sits at her table at these conventions and she hears the exact same question over and over and over and over. And it may be the 100th time in a day that she's heard that same question, but it's the first time that fan has asked her that question. So she's going to be gracious and she's going to answer their questions, and these people will continue to be fans. So.
Yeah. It's interesting. Again, I used to go to conventions for work, not the same way that you do, Wyatt, but I used to go to promote projects that I was working on, and I always found it, amazing to be able to have like that kind of staff pass, so you can go into the back rooms and see and meet people who normally you wouldn't get access to. And I always made a point of trying to support the people and the definitely actors and artists of projects that I grew up with and that inspired me. And I just remember being at a convention in Los Angeles, and I won't name drop, but I was having a conversation, and it was a long conversation with an actor from a very successful 70s TV show. And at the end, he said to me, "Would you like an autograph?" Now, normally my experience is usually what they end up doing is, I had a great time, I don't know if we're going to catch up again, here's something, and I know you're not the public, you're not the fan, but this is a network, kind of like a network thing. I've had quite a few of those, in fact, including from a Predator, which I was very touched with last time I saw him. And I said, yeah, absolutely. I said, sure. And so he grabbed a photo and wrote out his, signed it. And normally what ends up happening is they turn around and they put either a phone number or a contact detail for an agent, which again happens quite often. And I was like, wow, thank you so much, right? And then the guy went, $25. And I went, okay, all right, $25. It's like, I'm not going to that's your work. I get it. Herb Jefferson Jr., who played Boomer on Battlestar Galactica, I would run into him all the time, and at the time I was at UCLA as a student, and he was like, "Are you doing something? I'll come out and do a bit and all the rest of it," because we had kind of crafted this relationship, and it was always nice because it was like, how you doing? And I got to meet his wife at one of these conventions, so I always ask how it changes the relationship from you're a fan to potentially you're someone that I know and I can network with.
Right.
So I go down. I think I was actually speaking to Herb at that time, and we were just touching base. And what I didn't know was someone had gone up to the person who had asked me for the $25 and said, "Do you know who that guy is? He's working with these people who did this, this, and this." And the next thing I know, the actor came up and he had the money in his hand and he's like, "Here's the money back. I'm really sorry." And I went, no, keep it. It's fine. It's like, it's not a problem. And he's like, no. He goes, I thought you were a fan. I didn't realize this was networking. And I went, no, it was networking. It's fine. I'm like, it's my pleasure. The enjoyment you gave me over the years when I was growing up. If I can return that in more than just have conversation, absolutely. And I heard back from some of my friends, he wouldn't shut up about it. He thought he had completely blown the relationship because he had asked me for some money for what is his work.
Right.
And again, I think to myself, like, that's those moments where you realize, hey, we are all trying to survive. Whether you're an actor, whether you're a producer, whether you're a barista, it doesn't really matter. But I can just imagine what you end up getting sitting at a table and having people just kind of like, here's my money, this is what I want, sign this. I want to tell you my story.
Right.
I want to tell you this. I want to tell you that. It's I can't believe that it's an industry, to be honest with you.
The convention stuff?
The signing stuff. Like, it used to be, again, people used to always say to me, "Hey, Gil, you worked in Hollywood. Do you have photos with famous people?" And there are Instagrams full of photos with, this actor, and I waited around. And I go, "No, I don't." And they go, "You don't have any photos?" I go, "Well, I have photos, but that's with me and my friends, and like we're at dinner, or we're, at a barbecue, or we're on the job goofing around with something. But it's not like, here's me and, so-and-so, or here's me and..."
Hey, Wyatt, share how you got into signing autographs at conventions.
Ooh.
Well, Star Trek happened in the fall of 1989, I think, and then it was broadcast spring of 1990, and then spring of 1990, I also got the call to be on Predator 2, and then Predator 2, I think, was released that summer or that fall. So 1990. Well, you do certain gigs and you think, oh, this is going to be a stepping stone to something else, or this is going to make us. And then I was involved in feature films in Los Angeles, indie low-budget feature films, where I was part of the above-the-line creative team and a second unit director, a co-writer, a producer. And, you think things are going to go really well, and you think the project is going to take off, and you get a lot of buzz for about 6 months, and then the buzz goes away, and all of a sudden there's nothing. Well, the same thing with Predator 2. There's a lot of fans out there right now who are like, Predator 2 wasn't successful? It's like, well, Predator 2 wasn't as successful as Predator. It wasn't the big buzz that Predator was, and Predator 2 came out, made some money, and went away. And Star Trek, that was like season 3 of Star Trek. They had 7 seasons of Star Trek, followed by 7 seasons of DS9, followed by 7 seasons of Voyager, followed by 5 seasons of Enterprise. You kind of forgot about season 3 of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Not the episode you're in.
Well, not the episode I'm in.
That was banned in England in an island.
I know.
And not just that, that sequence, that opening sequence that you're featured in, is actually stands alone by itself on YouTube as the only Star Trek part that was censored in England and in Ireland. So, yeah.
So, long story getting longer. Fast forward to the late 2000s, probably 2008, 2010. We're starting to go to conventions with our films that we're making. So we've made this vampire film, Shadowland. We're going to all these conventions to sell the movie, to promote the movie, and to hold screenings and such. Well, we're at a convention, and this friend of ours walks up.
And by friend, it's a guy that we met at a couple of previous conventions.
Sure.
Because you start hanging out and meeting people.
Well, he walks up and he goes, there's a dude over there who was the Hare Krishna zombie in Dawn of the Dead 30 years ago.
I know who you're talking
was on
about.
Screen for 30 seconds.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, well, and he's sitting over there. He's getting $25 a pop to sign autographs, as the Hare Krishna zombie. He goes, dude, you were a fucking predator in Predator 2. He's like, why aren't you signing autographs right now? And it's like the light bulb.
We kind of look
on.
at each other and go, yeah,
like,
why
yeah,
aren't
why
we?
am I not signing autographs right now? So we dipped our foot in the water. I went home and we did up some photoshopped images of me in my Predator suit with the Predator logo and had them printed up on nice cardstock. And the next event we went to we put up a sign that said, the boar predator from Predator 2, and I had the photos out on the table, and boom, it took off. And then I got my Star Trek photos made up. I thought, well, what the heck? Let's do some Star Trek photos. Then it started shifting from, oh, we're here to promote our movie, to getting the people contacting me going, hey, can you come and be a guest at our convention? So really, we put ourselves out there. That's what happened.
Sure.
It's not like we had an agent. It's not like there was some booker who got a hold of us. It was just, and now it's all word of mouth. I tried going through a booker, a nice guy who was really trying to help out. I tried going through a booker for a while, but that just gets to be such a job because they're constantly, can you book, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? And if you want to make it a full-time gig, great. I didn't want to make it a full-time gig. I wanted to fit it into my schedule when it made sense. So we worked with a booker for a little while, and then it was like, no. If you want us at a convention, contact us. If we can make it work, we'll make it work. So we do maybe, we do maybe 6 or 8 conventions a year. And
especially, and they're just now starting back up.
Yeah, they died down during COVID. It was a little scary because we did a convention in March of 2020, like right as COVID was taking off here in the United States. And part of it was we were kind of a little hesitant, like, should we be doing this convention? And I remember getting really sick at the end of the convention and totally losing my voice, but that was something else. That wasn't COVID.
Yeah.
But we kind of scratched our heads afterwards and went, was that smart? Should we have done that? And then what happened was every other convention we had booked for like the next 6 months, a year, went away. We, as a matter of fact, now are getting scheduled to do some replacement conventions for stuff that got canceled, that kept getting pushed on down the line. We've got a convention this weekend that has been pushed 4 or 5 times. It's finally happening.
Yep.
It's finally happening.
Going off on what you were talking about when it like doing it as a full-time gig, we do conventions here in Australia when I was younger, you'd have one guest because we had to fly them halfway around the world and put them up. And we sometimes got fantastic people like George Takei came to Australia, and he was just amazing. I mean, I'll never forget when they closed the convention down, he thanked everyone for being so polite. He's like, when I'm in America, no, I'm doing Patrick Stewart.
Oh my.
He was basically saying that, yeah, oh my.
Oh
but
my.
When he was in America, he'd have people knocking on his door at 2:00 in the morning, going, sign this, and he's like, everyone's polite. They call me Mr. Takei. They, please and thank yous. He goes, I'm going to come back all the time. And it was probably maybe 100, 200 people tops in a hotel. So it was very intimate. It was very, everyone got to meet him. Everyone, he'd be sitting there having a coffee and you'd go up to him and you'd be like, hey, in the episode, the Corbinite Maneuver. And he's like, I'm not in that one. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it's kind of, it was really cool. Now they've become what happens in the US, which is you get 100 guests. And there are times, and the last one that I went to, which was probably 2019, and we were going for room, and there was this tiny little room where all the artists and the comic book artists are. And I look up, and there's Lee Majors sitting by himself with no one around. And behind him is like the $6 Million Man and the Fall Guy. And you could get to him. It wasn't like they had keepers.
Right.
So I walked up to him and I'm like, Mr. Majors? And he's reading a book. He's like, And I was just like, wow. I was like, first of all, welcome to Australia. I hope you're having a great time. And and then we just started talking. And at the end, of course, I was like, I have to get a signed autograph because you just wasted an hour and a half. And he's like, no one's coming to talk to me. And I'm like, when I was growing up, the $6 Million Man was everything. I mean, I remember going to a holiday house where they had one TV set, and the fight broke out because everyone wanted to watch $6 Million Man, and people kept going up and turning it to like the news. Like, it was crazy. And I'd share that with him too, actually. And I just thought to myself, it's so interesting that there's an industry that you would have, let's say, an actor such as Lee Majors, who was the world knew him in the 70s and 80s. And a whole generation's like, I don't know what that is. There's that guy's over there with the comic book guys, and who cares? And you've got to have a thick skin. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's a part of me, I'm like, when do you fly out? And he goes, oh, I leave right after the end of the show. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And he said, why? I said, well, I would love to take you and show you a little bit around Melbourne and Australia since you're here. I mean, I don't want you to think that we're just people who just, glom onto the latest thing and that's it. And he was like, oh, that's really nice, And I was like, yeah, it's cool. It was able to do that with some other people that I knew, but it was just one of those things. And again, my girlfriend, she's like, you're the only person who walks up and has an hour and a half conversation with like an actor from the 70s and then invites them out to go and see the city. I'm like, because that other part of it, like I know what it's like to travel to a strange place for a job, right? You live in your hotel room and you live where the work is. That's it. And again, I didn't just randomly throw that out there. Hey, $6 million man, let me go take you to see the kangaroos. It was, oh, you know what? Your work inspired me. I loved the shows that you worked on. Whether it was, I have friends who were stuntmen, and I understood what was going on when you watch The Fall Guy. But as a kid, I just saw it as an action show, and then I went back and understood what you guys were trying to do. I didn't speak to him though about his singing. I could not bring up Dear Jamie.
That wasn't bad, though.
I just didn't want to be that
bad.
cruel.
He didn't make a career out of it, but it wasn't bad.
After me explaining who Lee Majors was, I went and showed the Bionic Woman episode to my girl, and when he started singing Dear Jamie, she was like, you gotta turn it off. And then I went and played for her the opening of The Fall Guy. Said it's the same guy singing. She's like, he must have had lessons. So it's an interesting dichotomy. But yeah, it's just, they are people, and you never know. Sometimes you end up in the right place at the right time. There's an American actor called, I've got to remember his name. He was the lead actor in a Jerry Anderson TV show called UFO. He played a character called Ed Straker.
Ed Bishop.
Ed Bishop. Yeah. That's exactly who it was. And he happened to be at a convention, and he was the guest of honor for a banquet on a Saturday night. And I didn't want to go to the banquet because it was like $100 or something like that. And hey, there's Ed Bishop standing in the lobby of this hotel, and I'm like, aren't you supposed to be at the banquet? And he goes, yeah, someone was supposed to pick me up, and they never turned up. And I'm like, it's 2 hours in the banquet. He goes, do you know where it is? I said, no, I don't. I said, but I'm going to go get a pizza. You want to come? And he's like, yeah. And I went and had pizza with like Ed Bishop talking Jerry Anderson for like the whole evening.
And then later on, a gang of fanboys hunted you down and killed you.
Hey there, film lovers. I hope you're really enjoying this episode of Cinematic Perspective, but I wanted to take a moment out and share with you a brand new project I'm super excited about. It's called Spectacular Distraction, where I uncover hidden gems and forgotten classics from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. The movies and shows that shaped pop culture, but somehow slipped through the cracks. Remember those films that only aired once or twice, disappeared completely, but got stuck in your head? We'll find them, break them down. The rip-offs, the inspirations, and we'll go through and find out all the different pieces that are missing from cinema today. So if you're as obsessed with cinema and pop culture as I am, come on a nostalgic journey with me. Search for Spectacular Distraction on YouTube, hit subscribe, and never miss out on a hidden gem, deep dives, or iconic moments. Because everything else is just spectacular distraction.
There's just those really amazing moments where if you are genuine and they realize this isn't a guy who's like, hey, it's Ed Bishop and he's here by himself. Let me go and get all my UFO memorabilia and utilize it. It was just kind of like, hey, are you in the right place? Like, can I help? And just one last thing talking about conventions, and this is a bit of a throwback, but you were talking about meeting Jonathan Frakes. Mm-hmm. Well, my 21st birthday was at the time at a convention where he was the guest. And I have I'll see if I can dig it up. It's on VHS somewhere. I'm going to have to find a machine that works. But not only did he turn up to the room party, which was my birthday, but Jonathan Frakes challenged me to a phaser duel where we both imitated shooting each other at the same time and throwing ourselves on the floor. Because that was his claim to fame before he broke his back.
That's awesome.
Really just a down-to-earth guy. Just a fun guy. Just a really fun guy.
He's a character. Yeah.
All right, share your San Diego Comic-Con Jonathan Frakes story.
I had bumped it. Well, first of all, working on the episode with him, and he was probably the most social and friendly guy, and a joker, a bit of a character. And I had a couple scenes with him, and I then kept bumping into him in Los Angeles because he would go out and about and do stuff, and because he was a director himself, he would turn up at like the industry conventions, like. I'm trying to Showbiz Expo, I think, was a big tech expo that they had in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I remember that.
I'd go to Showbiz Expo and there'd be Jonathan Frakes, and I'd pass him and say hi to him, and I would introduce myself as having been in this episode, But probably about the fourth time we ran into each other, whether he remembered me from the episode or he remembered me from bumping into him and reminding him of the episode. So we were at San Diego Comic-Con in 2008.
Which is massive. Huge amount of people.
Sure.
And he had a table there, and I had just finished directing my vampire film. He was there. He had just done an episode of
The Librarian.
The Librarian, the third Librarian film, which had vampires in it. So
Sure.
I wanted to talk to him about vampire movies, which we did. But the cool thing was that I walked up, and I'm with Gayle and I'm with Robert Clark, the other Pirate Pictures guy, and I walk up and he's like, "Hi," and I'm like, "Jonathan, you may not remember me, and he goes, "You're Wyatt Wheat."
Oh no.
Wait.
I look at him and I look at Gayle and I look at Bob like,
Because Bob and I had walked up first, so Wyatt's like, "Did you guys tell him my
and I'm
name?"
like, "Did you guys set this up?" And they're like, and he's just looking at me and I'm looking at him like, there's no way this guy remembers my name. And then I realize I'm wearing a name tag.
The parallels here is so scary.
Oh, quit.
Because I'm this 20-year-old. I just turned 21. I'm at university. Actually, I hadn't even started film school then, and I'm just at a con, and he came up to. He definitely wasn't married then because he ended up meeting some nice Australian girls at the party and all the rest of it. But that's another story altogether. But go off, and then I run into him in LA. I run into him at Paramount. He goes, "I know you from somewhere," and I said, "You're never gonna pick it up." And he goes, "No, give me." He goes, "Do I fear?" And I go, "No." I go, "You came to a convention in Australia," and he goes, "The phaser fight."
The phaser fight.
He goes, "I
That's
don't know
pretty
your name,
memorable,
though."
though. That's pretty memorable.
There are people who you meet, some famous, some not famous. You see them succeed, and you're just so happy. And there happens to be a add-on for a box set of DVDs based on the Star Trek movie series. And somewhere along the way, they needed filler, or an extra DVD. So they did an hour conversation hosted by Whoopi Goldberg with William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, Patrick Stewart, and Jonathan Frakes. And it really is probably the only time that I've ever seen the four of them sit down. It's like you're sitting at a table,
Right.
surprisingly, like we're talking now, and you're in this conversation. And when I have hard days, or a day where I feel really excluded, especially with the lockdowns right now, I have this as an MP3 and I have it as a video file. And there are moments where Jonathan Frakes and Patrick Stewart are talking about how he went on this journey where, as an actor, he went to every meeting and every rushes and every editing session, and he learned. Patrick Stewart calls it Paramount University. He learned on the job to be a director, and he took it incredibly seriously.
Sure.
And opened the door for a lot of actors to be able to go in that series and actually test their directing chops. And it's just such a wonderful, of all the people that you come across, at least in that area, it's like, I'm really glad that he has been able to craft the career that he has. Because I have no doubt that if it just happened that I was working on something and I was in the crew and all that, he'd be like, "Hey, Gil, how you doing?"
Right.
And I'd probably go draw and would probably just goof around or anything like that, and would pick up exactly from where it left off. So I have incredible respect for him as a filmmaker, but he also understands the fan culture. If you've ever caught on YouTube one of his talks with some of the other Next Gen crew, there's a great one where for 40 minutes he goes into the audience and he asks every dumb question he's ever been asked to the people who are there. It's LeVar Burton, it's Brent Spiner, it's Michael Dorn, where and they're having a ball going back and forth, right? And it's just, you can see the enjoyment, and wow, if only every set was run the same way.
Well, that says a lot about the person. There were
Yeah,
people I
absolutely.
ran into
Absolutely.
repeatedly in Los Angeles. There were people you never ran into because they didn't go out in public. And then there were people you just
Right.
bump into occasionally. Yeah, so that said a lot about it.
Those moments happen in such a really nice way. If you handle them correctly, they just happen time and time again. I've also seen horror shows where people have run into people at Starbucks. I had a whole bunch of friends from Australia down, and the first thing they said to me after they flew in at night, we were going to go get some coffee in the morning. They're like, "We're going to see any famous people?" I'm like, "No, man, that doesn't happen. It's Los Angeles, whatever." We walk in, and Richard Dreyfuss is in front of the line getting coffee, and they're gushing, and I'm like, I don't know Richard Dreyfuss. I don't know if he's going to be like cool about it or not. He was absolutely cool about it. And he actually said to my friends, he's like, next time you meet someone, just take it a little easier, because if there's some actors who are just not going to be able to how to deal with it, because they were taking photos with him and they were, I loved you in Jaws, I loved you in Mr. Holland's Opus, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and they're reciting lines to him, like, which is probably one of the worst things you want to do to an actor. Like, an actor doesn't want to hear his lines from a film 20 or 30 years ago. It's like, do you remember this line? Do you remember when you said this? It's crazy, the goofy golf. And he's like, yeah. He was great. He was amazing. And I think at the end of it, we kind of smiled to each other, because he gathered that I wasn't, they were with me, but and I was just like, yeah, it's fame. What a bitch.
Listening to all of this and listening to what we're talking about, even though, we represent an age range here between the three of us, we represent an age range, with you being on the younger end, me being on the slightly older end.
Way older.
Way older.
But I'm grayer than you are.
So old. But you asked me at one point about non-disclosure agreements and was I familiar with them, and I said no.
Sure.
Because I think I was in Hollywood in an era early enough where there wasn't a threat of a problem. Now, working on a show like Star Trek Next Generation, they had color-coded scripts, and they were a little picky about who got a hold of the scripts. But I have all my color-coded changes in the script and everything to this day, but how are you going to get them out there? I mean, the most I could do was Xerox them at that point and take them to a convention maybe and hand them out. That wasn't really damaging, and it wasn't damaging on a large scale. Predator 2. I have a photo of myself in the full costume and with my head.
Which you weren't supposed to have.
Which I wasn't supposed to have. They didn't even say non-disclosure agreement. I think they had signs up on the stage saying no photography, and they told us we couldn't do this. I grabbed one of the Stan Winston guys and I said, dude, can we get some photos? And he's like, yeah, sure, let's go outside. So I got the photos. But again...
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you, because those photos are actually on Stan Winston's site.
Yeah, then the Winston guys found them and put them... Anyway, so even with having Predator photos before the film even came out, what was I going to do? Send them to Starlog? Send them to Cinefantastique? I mean, there wasn't a way to get them out there. And I wasn't... I mean, maybe if I'd gone to Entertainment Tonight and said, hey, I've got Predator photos. Woo. Hey, Entertainment Tonight, Predator photos. Real cheap.
Right.
So anyway...
How does that tie in with...
Well, just the difference between then and now. And the time where it was literally... Hey, Jonathan Frakes bumping into you at the Showbiz Expo.
Yep.
Hey, man, how's it going? Face to face. I'm seeing you. I'm meeting you. Hi, how are you? Conversation. You walking up to Lee Majors. Hey, Lee Majors, how are you? That conversation. Nowadays, my God, I don't need to do that. I've got a couple of million people on Twitter, and I'm just going to have a Twitter following. Or... Look, I got famous for doing virtually nothing. I got famous for having big boobs and a big butt, and I show them to you on Twitter. Look, I'm famous. So it's amazing to me that, thankfully we're still talking about people that we met very long ago, and that we're still talking about people who, did this sort of hard, in-person, hands-on work, and that's still viable, and that still means something. And it's just the Predator fans... The Star Trek fans, after Predator 2 didn't really do anything in the early 90s, and it didn't make us household names, and we didn't get famous because of it. So we went, oh, well, tough crap.
That was fun.
And we moved on. We were like, okay, that didn't work. So we move up to like 2008, 2010, and the fans have found each other online. These films are now available for streaming. These films are now available on DVD. And the technology has changed such that it came back around again. So I owe a lot of my...
Fame,
if you will. I owe a lot of my fame to this new technology in a lot of ways. Because even as old school a guy as I am... if the Predator fans hadn't started finding each other online and forming groups and forming Facebook groups...
And naming you.
And naming, I'm the boar predator because the fans
Shaming
named
or
us.
naming?
No,
Naming.
Yeah, no, the fans are the ones who decided we were the lost tribe and gave all the different predators names. And then the toy company came around and went, okay, well, we're going to name all these predator action figures off these names that they have. The fans gave us the names. When I got put in a suit and I walked on set, I was not called the boar predator. The fans came up with that years later.
The weed predator?
The weed predator, yeah. Hey, you.
Hey, you mentioned the toys. At least the NECA line of boar predators are based on your photos too, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The sculptor contacted me a couple of years before the figures came out, and he said, do you have any reference photos for your predator? And so I sent him the photos that I wasn't supposed to have in the first place. Right. And if you look at the photos I've done and the hand gestures, and then you look at the hand gestures on the action figure, the hand gestures are identical from my photos. So
those action figures are based on you. So that is actually your character.
The boar, yeah.
You were talking about like NDAs and all the rest of it. I just wanted to share the very first day that I turned up at Paramount to work on a Star Trek episode. I walked in. I actually started the day in makeup, not for myself, but just to in the makeup department with Michael Westmore. And then there were two. I think it was Deep Space Nine. It was because there was two kind of Cardassians talking about people who became famous for nothing. Cardassians being walked in, and as I walked in the door into Studio 9, I think it's Studio 9 or Shed 9.
I think it was 8 and 9.
Security put their hands on me and said, "You can't come in." And I said, "What?" And they go, "We don't know who you are. You cannot enter." And I had to go up and speak to, I think it was Michael Piller, who was the executive producer with Michael Westmore, to get permission to get on set, because that's how locked down it was. And the story was that someone had some guests. They came onto the set, and the comment was overheard was, "Wow, now that I've seen the sets are all made out of plyboard and paint, it's never going to be a real spaceship to me." And they said, "That's it. We're not letting anyone in."
Oh.
And I think that year, there was myself and whoever the president of E! Network Television were the only two people who got allowed on the set. And I remember Michael Piller asking me, "Who are you? Why are you here? What's your interest?" And I'm like, "I'm studying at UCLA," because that was my first introduction to Paramount and to that crew. I was interviewing Michael Westmore for a thesis, and he's like, "You understand, you can't take photos, you can't talk to people about what you see." And I go, "Can I write about it in my thesis?" He goes, "Yeah, that's fine." And then, like, at the end, he's like, "Send me a copy of your thesis." And I'm like, whoa.
So I think it's awesome that we started off with a plan of what we were going to talk about today and then just veered from it entirely. But this was a fun episode.
It just went completely fuck off.
Yeah.
Like a little monkey that, like, took shit and just ran over into the trees over there.
Bad dates.
Bad dates.
Little monkey with the bad dates, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
I am the monarch of the sea. Sorry. Now I've just got Raiders of the Lost Ark in my head.
Gil has gone bye-bye,
Gil's gone
Gayle.
bye-bye.
What do you got?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Anyway,
Yeah.
we're going to wrap up this episode. We've got plenty of more things that we're going to be talking about every week. Be sure to find us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, and anywhere else you can find us. We are Cinematic Perspective.
Before you leave, though, I want everyone on these platforms go and fanboy Wyatt Weed on our streams, on his personal streams. You know what you're going to be asking. You're asking for anime thumb-sucking photos right now.
No, please, dear God, no. Please, dear God, no.
WyattWeed.com.
Dear God, no.
Absolute ball, as always. I can't wait till we do this again, and we invite you all to hang out with us here on Cinematic Perspective. I'm out.
All right. See you later.